World Carnivore Month is January 1 to January 31st.
Human beings are absolutely obligate hyper carnivores.
There's huge improvements in health just by eliminating sugar, grains, processed foods, and all seed oils.
85% of the stuff in the grocery store, or maybe even more, has sugar in it.
There are some microbiome experts that are really big fans of carnivore diet because you get a lot of very good diversity in your microbiome and you seem to get the kinds of microbes that are associated with good health.
I just treated it as an experiment, and when I went to all meat, I thought I'll do this for 6 weeks and I won't cheat once or it'll mess up the experiment, and then I just did it.
And I see when you go through the diet and there's so many times I'm like, that looks so good.
I get a lot of questions about dairy. Can I have dairy on the carnivore diet? Can I have condiments on the carnivore diet? I would suggest that you keep dairy out of the carnivore diet, especially if you're trying to have weight loss. If you're trying to induce some weight gain, then I would recommend bringing some dairy in. However, if you have pain, you have inflammation, you feel like you have arthritis, or you have shoulder pain, elbow pain, you got pain in your joints, again, I would suggest remove that dairy out. Even cheese, which can be very difficult to do. And these are just things that you can try for a period of time and then just see how it works for you. And then if it's working really well, you might be really screwed because now you got to figure out a way to stick with that. Condiments are another thing, ketchup, mustard, dressings, and so on. What I'm going to say about that is, if you can find stuff that doesn't have sugar in it, which is very, very difficult. I think like 85% of the stuff in the grocery store, or maybe even more, has sugar in it. Then I don't see any problem with a small influence of those things. Again, though, if you have issues, if you are someone who's in a lot of pain, or you just have some issues that you really want to try to work out, I suggest going full on 100% carnivore. There's actually some different stages to it of the carnivore diet. I'll just flat out steal a page from the Carnivore Cookbook where they show you there's kind of some different levels to this stuff. And again, I would advise the more problems that you have, the better off you are staying, being as high level as you possibly could for a period of time, which may be very hard to adhere to, but it might be worth it, and it might be encouraging because who knows, in 3 days or 5 days you might start feeling a lot better. Just like many of my relatives have, just a few days they've been able to turn things around. I mentioned my mother-in-law being able to come off of diabetic medication after having it for 7 years, and with about 1 week, 10 days of the carnivore diet, she was able to get rid of all of her medication. That is just absolutely crazy. I would say that things like mustard and some of these things, I would say that, again, I would try to go without them for a bit, see how your body's reacting. But if you feel like you really want them and you really need them, and they're going to help you to continue to get momentum towards going towards your goal, then I would say just leave them in and don't really worry about it too much. Can you have a Zevia drink? Some of these sodas that are made with stevia and monk fruit. I would say yes, you can have those. However, it's just like being in a fight and putting your hands down. Like, it starts to get a little bit risky, and you might get popped, you might get punched, you might trigger some reaction, because we're not really supposed to have those flavors. If you think about it, from an evolutionary standpoint, where would we get that pop from? Where would we get that flavor from? You're not really going to find it anywhere else. You could make a case that you would find it in some like blueberries and some cherries and some strawberries and some things like that, but like, how often would you have access to those things? And I don't know, you'd have access to them for 3-4 weeks or a month or two, and then it would be gone, and then you had to forage for something else. But most of the things that we're supposed to eat, in my opinion, are going to be things that are kind of savory, salty, fatty, buttery, protein-like things, rather than Crystal Light or some of these things. If you feel like you're relatively a healthy person and you're not too concerned about your body weight, and you're not too concerned about, you don't have any issues with food, you don't have an addiction to food, then I would say you're probably totally fine with even squeezing a little bit of lemon in your water and things like that. But if you're anything like me and you struggled with it most of your life, and you have very heavy relatives and things like that, there's a lot of obesity in the United States, and a lot of people really, really struggle with their food. If you're somebody that's like that, I would say the stricter that you go, the better, because it won't trigger anything. Do you ever get a cheat meal? Do you ever get an opportunity to kind of just go for it here and there. I think instead of thinking about a cheat of something that's totally against the diet, I like to think of it as more of like a treat. That comes from my buddy Josh Settlage. He posted that recently on Instagram, but I think it's a great way of looking at it. Have something that treats yourself, but also have something that doesn't hurt you. So how do we figure that out? Well, you can go to a website, you can check out ruled.me, or again, you can check out Maria and Craig Emmerich. They have books on a keto diet. So maybe you cook up something that's keto, but not necessarily carnivore. There's a small difference between the two. The ketogenic diet allows for an immense amount of fat, and it allows for you to eat other things other than just meat. There's snacks, there's desserts, there's all kinds of things. And so maybe here and there, like if you're doing this with your spouse, doing this with your girlfriend, doing this with your family, maybe you encourage them and say, hey, you know what, once a week we're gonna have like a keto cheat, which can still be fun. I know some of you are thinking like, this sounds crazy, but it'll still be really good. Like a fathead pizza or something like that can be absolutely delicious. Another area where people get tripped up on this, there's a few things. Sometimes people have trouble with their sleep. Just know that you have to kind of ride this stuff out. And just a small tip about sleep, that something has helped me over the years quite a bit. I spent probably about 4 or 5 years really being extremely sleep deprived, and I'm lucky that that time period didn't last any longer, because I think I would have really slipped into some really tough times. But luckily it didn't last long enough. Luckily my powerlifting career was taken away from me from falling with a 1,085 squat, and that kind of changed everything forever. I started to adhering to more nutrition and things like that. But what I think happens to a lot of people is they get hit by waves of sleep. You know, we get hit by like 2 or 3 of them a day, and wave number 1 usually happens around noon, 1 o'clock. Sometimes it happens even without eating, and sometimes it happens regardless of the style of nutrition that you have. Sometimes it just hits you. I think it's just like part of our rhythm. Another time that usually happens is sometimes around, you know, somewhere between 3 and like 5 p.m. Sometimes you kind of get hit by it again, and then you're not hit again until like 11, you know. Something that has helped me is sometimes when I've gotten hit by that second wave of fatigue, second wave of needing to sleep, sometimes I've just tried to get my butt in bed super early. So I've had days where, you know, I get home and I'm kind of feeling tired as I'm eating dinner, you know, at 5 or 6 o'clock, and I'm like, you know what, I just need to figure out a way to get my butt in bed. And that has helped me tremendously. So even for some of you who maybe don't have the convenience of sleeping maybe that early, just see if you could start getting to bed about an hour earlier than what you're used to, and there'll be an adjustment period. You changed your food, it's gonna change every behavior, it's gonna change every single thing that you have going on in your life. Also, make sure you're active enough to actually need sleep. You know, once you start this carnivore diet, once you start to lose a little bit of body weight, when you start to lose weight, there's nothing more invigorating than losing body weight. It really fuels your body, and it feels like, it's hard to really even describe how much energy it gives you. It's somewhere between like a cup of coffee, a shot of adrenaline, and just a huge caloric surplus to your body. I realize that you might not be eating as many calories, but if you think about it, you got a lot of calories resting around your stomach that your body is now releasing. And that is an amazing feeling, super empowering too. First time you hear somebody say, hey man, you're starting to look really good, that gives you a lot of energy, and you just feel invigorated to attack each and every single day. So make sure you're getting enough activity. I would suggest that you try to lift weights about 3 times a week. If you're really not into weights, I would suggest that you just do like 1 or 2 things. Every time you hit the gym, just do some resistance training, do a couple sets of 10 and get the heck out of there. You don't need to spend a lot of time in there. And then make sure you're hitting up a few 10-minute walks every single day. The last thing I want to touch upon is cramping. You know, sometimes people, their electrolytes get thrown off. You're not consuming like large amounts of potassium because you cut out greens. Greens have potassium in them. Fruit has a lot of potassium in it as well. We're also not consuming carbohydrates. Carbohydrates help to hydrate the muscle, and that's probably the worst part of it. So something to be very careful of is that when you do eat carbohydrates, you really need to make sure that you like kind of double up or even triple up on your water, because you will end up with cramps, and it'll be pretty severe. So if you're going to eat carbohydrates, if you're going to cheat on the diet a little bit, then make sure you really load up on your water. But you just need water in general anyway, but you also need salt. So pre-workout, a great pre-workout is just to consume some salt. Throw some salt and some water. You don't need to throw so much salt in there that it changes the flavor. That might be kind of gross to you. You might not be used to that. But that would be my suggestion, is just to utilize some salt. And make sure you're also eating enough food. I think in general, people aren't consuming enough nutrients. It's important that you understand that almost every single food that we have that's alive has potassium in it. Salmon also has a tremendous amount of potassium in it, but beef has some potassium in it as well, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think eggs may have that in there as well. You might even want to bring in some supplementation. A company like Perfect Keto, they make electrolyte capsules. And then there's also something I get off of Amazon here and there, because I like to train a lot. I run, I lift, I do a lot of different things. I sweat a lot. And so I'll bring in, it's called Snake Diet Juice is what it's called. And I get that off of Amazon, just comes in little packets, and I use like quarter a packet a couple times a day, sometimes half a packet. But what I noticed with that, and what I noticed with any electrolytes, is if you use a lot of electrolytes, including just salt, that will mess up your stomach, and that will can also lead to diarrhea. So you need to be a little cautious and pay attention to some of that. And then, just again, make sure that you're eating enough food. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people are making, because I've dealt with those kind of cramps in the middle of the night and stuff like that in my legs, and it's not comfortable. It's absolutely brutal. But one way that I've overcome it is just not so much just water, because you got to keep in mind that water will actually dehydrate you, because it will pull out a lot of minerals as well. You'll end up just keep going to the bathroom over and over and over again because you're not eating any carbohydrates. But you need some salt in your diet as well, so you can salt your meat and throw some salt in your water. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. Catch you all later.
Chad Mendes.
What was the carnivore diet like for you? Because you mentioned earlier, I think that you did it for like 3 or 4 months straight.
Yeah, I did 4 months straight, and it was basically the reason. I mean, you were a big motivator for that, honestly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you were. I follow you on Instagram. I see all your meals, and I see when you go through the diet, and dude, there's so many times I'm like, fuck, that looks so good. I wouldn't mind this diet, And so, but I have psoriasis. I've had psoriasis. And we talked about it last time on the podcast, and it's been something I've struggled with my whole life. There it is. So this
is
was
psoriasis like a virus?
No, it's an autoimmune disease.
Okay.
It's basically what happens is that part of the skin, like we all have skin cells that die and just shut off, and those skin cells there just reproduce so fast that it doesn't have time to like shed off like normal. So it just builds up plaques is what they call it, just dead skin. And so it just gets super dry, super itchy, cracks, it bleeds. And I've struggled with this my whole life. It's a hereditary thing. My uncle has it.
As an adult and as somebody who's well accomplished, it's like, all right, well, my fucking legs are red. What was it like as a kid?
Oh man, I'd always be itching them, and I didn't know.
Real embarrassing,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Get it on your face and stuff too.
No, not on my face. It started off on my shins as a kid, and that's the only place that I had it for a long time. But it just like over the years, just kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger. So at first, it started off. It was only like a little patch like that on one shin, and then it ended up going from ankle like that all the way up to my knee. And it switched over to the other side and started going ankle to knee on that side. And then in college, I started getting on my scalp, my ears, and then just over the years, it's just kind of starting to spread all over. I got my elbows now, and so it's just something that I was like at this point, I'm like, I got to figure out something new. I've taken different medications, like basically over the counter, like creams or even prescription type creams, and yeah, they help, but it's never been anything that's like really taken it away. And what is this I'm putting on myself? Like, I don't even know what the hell this shit is. So I'm like, there's got to be something else. So seeing you, listening to Rogan, talking to Dr. Sean Baker and Paul
Saladino.
Yeah, yep. Saladino, Dr. Saladino, and just getting their perspective on the thing, on the situation. I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to do this for 4 months. And basically, it's going to be an elimination diet. What is causing? Is there something that I'm eating that's screwing up my gut, that's inflaming this? Because they say a lot of autoimmune diseases come from the gut and bacteria and all that. So I'm like, all right, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to try this. So jumped right into it full bore. Like after that trip, that was a hunt. I got back from the hunt and I looked at myself and I was just like, are you kidding me?
It's crazy. For people who don't have a visual, it kind of looks like poison ivy or something like that. Like there's some swelling and a lot of dry skin and it looks like blistery.
So, and then.
Does it hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like irritated. Huh? Yeah,
Irritated.
it looks like it would be like irritated. Yeah.
Power Project family, we talk about beef and meat all the time on the podcast. That's why we've partnered with Certified Piedmontese Beef. But did you know this? That 85% of all grass-fed, grass-finished beef in the United States is imported from other countries? 85%.
Damn.
But Certified Piedmontese is made in the U.S. of A.
America.
Fuck yeah. So go out and get some of the best tasting, some of the leanest, some of the best beef from Piedmontese. Andrew, how can they get it?
Absolutely. So you guys can head over to cpbeef.com and at checkout enter promo code POWER to save 25% off your entire order. And if your order is $150 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Again, cpbeef.com. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Fuck yeah.
So I jumped right in about 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks. I did like basically a before and after of being on the diet. And I don't know if you can see it. I think it's on this one. Yeah. So that's already like 2 weeks, I think is what I said on there. I can't remember, but it wasn't very long into it.
And then we got to also say that some of that probably has to do with you're off your feet a little bit more. You weren't still on the hunt. Like that hunt might have aggravated it, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was telling you earlier. I think one of the main things I've noticed that inflames it the most is lack of sleep. So, 8 hour, like less than 8 hours, like 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours, which I typically get on these hunts, because you're getting up before the sun comes up and, sometimes you go to bed late after harvesting something in the evening, whatever. So, you're getting 4 hours of sleep. You go 4 or 5 days of that, and I come home from a hunt, and it's really inflamed.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference, though. I mean,
It's incredible, the difference. I mean, it looks like after 2 weeks, it looks like it's gone.
Yeah, it helped. And so my thought was this, like, I'm going to try this for, a month. And if nothing's changing with my psoriasis, I'll probably just go back to eating how I did before. But like 2 weeks in, I was like, oh, this is obviously doing something. And so I stuck with it. I did it for 4 months straight and I felt really good. The first week I felt crappy. I think they call that the keto flu is what and not crappy. You just feel, for me, I just felt unmotivated. I just felt lazy and tired.
Did you have electrolytes at that time? Because for a lot of people, that makes a difference.
It dumps water out of your system the first couple of days.
Maybe.
And you lose like 5, anywhere between 4 or 5 pounds, which people are used to having that extra like little fluff on them.
Yeah.
And when it's gone, it just kind of does make you feel drained. And you go to like lift or something and you notice that you shake with weights that are a lot lighter than normal. And you're like, I don't understand what's going on. Then you kind of just feel like shit for a little bit.
Yep. So that was
exactly what he's talking about.
Week and a half. I didn't know that. See, I probably should have done a little bit more research on that. Because I went on Rogan's podcast and he was saying there's supplements that will help with that that I didn't know about. And I looking back, or if I do that hardcore again like that, I probably would look into that. Maybe I can just hit you up and see what you think. But
absolutely, yeah, just salting your food, or like we have a new hydration product that just came out, and we've been working on that for a long time. But a lot of these hydration products can help. We've been with a company called Element for quite some time. They have a great product. Yeah. And it's just a way to add some salt, potassium, magnesium, calcium to your diet, where otherwise you're kind of losing it when you don't have carbs in your system. Yeah. The carbohydrates can really help hydrate the muscles, and when that's absent, you get rid of that, or even just getting rid of junk in general that you're eating. Your body's not going to hold as much water, so you'll feel fatigued.
Yeah, and I did notice that for, like I said, a week and a half, and then but I leaned out big time. Like, it's crazy how much I leaned out in just like a month. I was like, man, this is good. I feel good now. My body's obviously responding well to it. My psoriasis is doing better. So I was like, I'm just going to do it for 4 months. I did it for 4 months. And then after that, Dr. Sean was saying basically like, hey, just start adding stuff in and just see. He's like, you don't need to stay on that strict of a carnivore diet for the rest of your life. You don't, it's not, you're not doing it for health reasons. You're doing it for psoriasis, basically, to see what inflames it. So I started adding things back in. I tried, some rice. I add some rice back in with some sushi, and that didn't seem to do much. And I did a little bit of potatoes. The nightshades can be tricky there. Like I noticed peppers and tomatoes really bug it. But for whatever
What a
reason,
great thing to know, though, right?
Yeah.
Like now you know, and you can be like, I don't mind paying the price of eating some pizza tonight or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not like I'm going to be on the toilet, like crapping my brains out. I just have to deal with a little bit of a skin irritation.
So right here, you're saying it's 3 months into the diet.
Yeah.
And you're,
Fucking hands are so fast.
That was right.
Yeah, bro.
I think that was right at the beginning of us starting to train again, huh? For at least when it was supposed to be in October.
It just looks like just a little jab, you know, but that would hurt so bad.
But yeah, man, I was feeling good. Like I said, I was lean, felt light and fast, and it was good. I'm normally having to eat like every hour to 2 hours.
Shit, let's watch that. Play that back.
Yeah,
one more.
It's just I got it on loop.
Yeah. I want you guys to pay attention to his feet. It's crazy.
Okay.
Like the arms are flying, and that's the thing everyone looks at. But the balance that it takes to throw bombs like that and to throw shots like that real quickly is it's unbelievable. The amount of athleticism. Like you wouldn't. I don't know. You don't think about it.
The feet, I notice it big time when my legs are not in condition.
Here we go.
Shape.
Yeah, watch this.
Jesus.
If you were to slow that down, you wouldn't really find him on the ground that much. And that was Tyson when Tyson was in his prime.
Yeah.
He was just leaping across the ring, zigzagging on people. Like I think it's a shame that Tyson will never get the credit as the athlete that he was. He's one of the greatest athletes of all time, but because he had that kind of stocky build and he just knocked people out, I think everyone just thought he was like explosive. But
he was super athletic. You see those shadow boxing videos with him, like
even now he can still move.
Or just move. Oh yeah.
Dr. Lisa Wiedman.
You've been doing this style of eating for way longer than even we have.
13 years to be exact. And so grateful to have found it because it's really changed my life. And I really only came into this carnivore, let's say, social media world more recently because I started seeing that there was people saying, well, yeah, that's great, Mark. You eat meat. It looks like it's working great, but you can't sustain that. It's not sustainable. You can't do that long term. That can't be healthy long term. And I kept hearing that over and over. And I was just like, hello. Yeah, here I am 13 years later, feeling better than ever. I feel like in a way I hate to use the term reverse aging, but I feel that everybody who comes to it has noticed dramatic improvements in the way they feel, the way they look. And to hear people say, you're going to end up with a heart attack, you're going to kill yourself, it really triggers me because I'm like, no, it can't be farther from the truth. This is the natural ancestral diet. This is the way our bodies are meant to be nourished. And that's really the bottom line for it, really.
Do you think that people need to draw as hard of a line as you did? Because you kind of make it sound like maybe about 13 years ago that you just stopped eating sugar and just made this real commitment. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons we can get into those, but like, do you think that other folks need to, kind of adhere to that same stringent kind of discipline?
Now, I certainly feel there's absolute huge improvements in health just by eliminating sugar, grains, processed foods, and all seed oils. I mean, if somebody just started with that, did that, they'd probably notice dramatic improvement in their health. And so to say you have to go, let's say, full bore and give up vegetables, nuts, seeds, and fruit, because that's really that fringe stuff outside of sugar, grains, and the seed oils. No, I feel because you can get such a health benefit by not going full bore, great. For me personally, after doing all the research and seeing how toxic vegetables really can be, and they have phytates, lectins, things that are really not healthy for us, things that are meant to keep them on earth and keep us from eating them, I was like, well, why am I putting that in my body? And then we'll go into the fruit thing with the fructose. any taste of sweet for anybody who, and those of you out there will know what I'm talking about. Giving up the taste of sweet is really difficult. Sugar is addictive. And for me personally, fruit will also continue to trigger the cravings. And so that's why I draw the line, because this lifestyle is so simple without including all that other extraneous noise that causes cravings and issues for me. That's my reasoning. But for somebody who maybe is not so strongly addicted to the taste of sweet and doesn't keep what I call falling in the ditch, it's so easy when you're out in social situations, holidays, vacations to say, oh, well, just this time. And then next thing you know, you're down the slippery slope and eating that junk again.
How many days do you think someone would have to experiment with something like a meat-based diet to like kind of get exactly what you're talking about? Like, you think someone just give it a go for 3 to 5 days or something like that?
I mean, I've coached people for about 12 years now, and I strongly recommend that it's a 90-day trial. A lot of people say 30 days, World Carnivore Months, 30 days. That's a great way to start. But to really feel the effects of it and to get over the keto adaptation and getting your body to say, oh, wait a minute, hey, you're not putting junk in there anymore. This is what we're dealing with. And to start feeling benefits, because you have to remember, people are eating for decades, 20, 30, 40, 50 years before they now pick up something that somebody says, it says, plants a seed to say, let me try this carnivore thing. But they've had decades of their bodies being inflamed from having that garbage, sugar, grains, and seed oils in them. Your body's not going to flip on a switch and in 5 days say, I feel great. Some people might have a fairly quick response to it, but I always say, do the 90 days. I mean, you can learn so much in 90 days, and 90 days is just a blip on the radar as far as your life. So that's where I feel you'll get the most benefit out of seeing if it's going to work for you.
When you mentioned the sugar is addictive, and I want to know, for you, what is the effect on you when you, let's say, when's the last time you reintroduced fruits, actually, since you've been carnivore for 12 years or 13 years?
Yeah, well, I did not reintroduce sugars. And way back at the beginning of carnivore, I experimented.
We're in over our heads today, but she's hardcore. We're finding out.
Yeah, well, and only because for me, it's what really works, and it's what makes me feel good. And I know how horrible it is having just that constant, that nagging voice of get up and go get some ice cream, get up and eat some of those chips, get up. And I have such food freedom without having that it's not worth it to go back into what I called back down into the ditch. So I did way at the very beginning of just trying to wrap my brain around this carnivore thing when I first learned about it on that zeroing in on health. I was, out at an orchard picking nectarines and peaches with my kids, and just the smell and the aroma, I was like, I'm just going to have half a peach. Well, I realized that half a peach turns into a couple hours later wanting another half a peach and wanting 3 peaches. And then it's, like I said, it's a slippery slope right back into where you are at. And so I just feel like there's a spectrum, just like in alcoholism, where some people, you can be an alcoholic and just really drink 2 or 3 drinks every single night. And you can be an alcoholic where once you have one drink, you drink till you black out. And then there's, everything in between that. With sugar addiction, it's very similar in that I feel that some people can just say, all right, I can have a piece of birthday cake on my birthday and they're okay. And they can handle that and do that. A lot of people I find have that piece of cake, or they're on vacation, and then it slides into that full weekend, and then it slides into a month, and then it slides into, gaining back the weight that they had taken off, and then they're just self-sabotaged and frustrated. And it really comes down to, and I don't know what your personal experiences are with giving up the taste of sweet and giving up sugar, and if you've ever actually tried it for a length of period of time, but it's a really tough thing to do. We're bombarded constantly. Like, you go to Home Depot to buy a screwdriver and there's Kit Kats and Snickers in front of you at the cash register. So it's almost like and people don't realize it, is when you're a recovered alcoholic and you're at a party and people know that, they're not saying, oh, just have one shot. I mean, come on, you only live once. Like, people aren't doing that. But with this whole sugar addiction, when you've given it up and you're in a situation, people are just like, they can't comprehend that you're not going to eat it, and they're offering it to you. And it's almost pushed upon you. Oh, Aunt Sally just made your favorite apple pie. You can't say no, and people don't realize that when it comes to an addiction of eating sweet things, it really has to be abstinence. You can't moderate. I can't eat half of a cupcake. There's just no such thing.
Same.
I can't moderate it. So that's where this whole thing with abstinence, with anything that you feel that you should not be eating and you want to give up, but you have a hard time giving it up, it has to be abstinence. You're not going to moderate that substance.
And I think it's amazing that you mentioned how it's a spectrum and kind of relating it to individuals who are alcoholics, because there are some people I know that can have one donut. And if you have the ability to do that, you have the awareness in yourself to do that, then you're fine. Me, it's not one donut, never will be one donut. It's always going to be multiple until I'm full.
And
right?
if you have one in the morning, then you're like,
I'm fucked. Let's go. But like, it doesn't happen for me personally. That doesn't happen with fruits. Like, I'm totally okay with fruits. I like eating fruit, but I that's something that I just can't really go overboard with. So I think it's necessary for individuals to figure out where they are. Like, going cold turkey off of that stuff is beneficial, and then figuring out what can you maybe add in safely that might bring some benefit to your life, and know where you have that self-control. Because I don't have self-control with Ben and Jerry's, so I won't have it often. Or I really won't. But I think for some individuals, they may be able to get away with having a little bit less restriction when it does come to those things, if they have that level of self-control. We've talked to countless guests on the podcast about the importance of strong, functional feet. And most people's feet don't function the way they should because of years of wearing narrow toe box shoes that over time weaken the feet and then actually don't allow the toes to function the way they should. Most shoes are casts and the toes don't move. That's why I've partnered with Peluva. Now, Peluvas are flat, wide, and have a 5-finger design so that whenever you wear the shoes, you're now getting the benefit of toe space. And that space that's being created through your toes is going to allow your feet to begin to function the way they should, literally all day long. You can wear these shoes while running, you can wear the shoes in the gym, you can wear the shoes while relaxing. Anywhere you want, you can wear Peluvas while getting the benefit of toe space. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at peluva.com/power project. That's PELUVA.com/power project. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject15 to save 15% off your order. Again, peluva.com/power project. Links down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes below.
This is Mark Bell from Super Training Gym. Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West. We're here in State Line, Nevada. It looks absolutely beautiful out here. We had a question about the carnivore diet and how to kind of transition into it. Well, somebody who's mean would just say, hey, you fat bastard, just transition into it, just start eating meat. But I know for myself, the transitions over the years have taken a lot of time. World Carnivore Month is upon us. It is late December, and World Carnivore Month is January 1 to January 31st. So those of you that can commit to that and can be on that level of just basically eating meat and eggs and bone broth for a month, more power to you, and welcome to the party. But for those of you that are really considering this but are on the bubble and you're like, I'm not even sure how the hell to do it, I don't know how my stomach's going to be, I'm not sure. A slow transition would be to start with a paleo style diet. Rob Wolf wrote a book years and years ago called the Paleo Solution, and I highly recommend that. That's where I started. So basically you'd want to start with meat, vegetables, and fruit. Would be a great way to transition. If you're currently a person that drinks Coke or Pepsi, start to drink Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi or Coke Zero. Start to try to find some alternatives. You can even buy a book off of Amazon called Eat This, Not That, which is a book that teaches you about, maybe you're going to steer yourself if you were to eat using like DoorDash or something like that, and you ordered something from, let's say like Applebee's or something. It's going to steer you towards healthier options that have higher protein. It's going to steer you towards lower calorie items. On a side note, I actually bought that book for my daughter years ago when she asked some nutrition questions, because I didn't want her to feel like this influence or nutrition was only coming from me. So I didn't want to say, hey, here's how you eat, and I didn't want her to have a weird relationship with food. So we went over Eat This, Not That, which has very, very reasonable suggestions, and that's why it worked well for her, and it can work really great for a lot of you. The main thing with any nutritional intervention that you ever choose, and it doesn't matter what style of diet that you pick, most people try to eat less and they try to move more. And it's the number one mistake that you can make while dieting, because you're jumping in, you're doing too many things at one time. To make a commitment to move more is great, or to make a commitment to cut back on your food is great. But to do both simultaneously and think that you're a master of either one of these things, that's basically what you're doing. You're walking into the jiu-jitsu dojo, and you're pointing at the one black belt that's in there, and you're saying, hey, let's roll. Which is something that you don't do at a Brazilian jiu-jitsu or at a jiu-jitsu dojo. That's something that you don't do. It's very disrespectful, and you're going to get your ass handed to you. And the same thing is going to happen to your diet. You're going to get chewed up and spit out, and every time you get spit out, you'll be a little bit fatter for it, because it's just so hard to maintain that. You will most likely have a rebound that's catastrophic, that ends up putting you going in the opposite direction. So a way to transition with this carnivore diet is to get used to the food. I want you to eat a lot of eggs. Eat a lot of cheese. I know that cheese and dairy is always kind of like questionable on this diet. Have some heavy cream. Have things that have an abundance of calories. Eat some ribeye. Throw some butter on there. Be a little over the top, and do that for a week or two. It's not going to kill you to do it for a week or two. Eat some strawberries and blueberries and some of these things. They're not part of the carnivore diet, right? But we're doing these things to get ourselves used to what you're about to do next. And that's always important, is that we make incremental progress. If I haven't learned anything from the years and years and years that I spent in the gym, one thing that I did pick up is that it's all about incremental progress. You can pass up anybody. You could pass up the most talented lifter that you've ever seen if you apply incremental progress and you take your time with it, and you don't care how long it takes for you to get better at something. Those of you that are listening that are 300 pounds, those of you that are listening that are just extremely overweight, what if you said to yourself, hey, you know what? This is probably going to take 10 or 12 years for me to drop this weight, but 10 or 12 years from now, I'll be a totally different person. And 5 years from now, that means that you'd probably be 50 pounds less. That sounds pretty good. A year or two down the road, you'll be 20, 30 pounds less. I mean, that sounds pretty great to me. That's what I did. That's how long it's taken me. It's taken me a long time to get myself in position to where I'm like, okay, I know for a fact I will never gain back any of that weight. I might gain back, 5 or 10, give or take here or there, but I still have a lot of cravings. I still deal with them every single day. And this is a way that me sharing this information with you guys is a way for me to give back, because I know the pain of it. I know how difficult it can be to try to overcome some of these hurdles. And I know what it's like to be addicted to food. And I know that you're addicted to food, but you don't have to be. You don't have to be the same person you were yesterday. Whatever narrative that you made up in your head about yourself, about how you're fat and other people don't like you, and you can't feel loved, or you can't be as popular as somebody else or as successful as somebody else because you're too fat, or you're too short, or you're too this, or you're too that. None of those things have to be true. I used to think I was dumb. I don't think that anymore. I'm over it. I changed. I feel better. I feel good. I feel great about nearly everything that's going on in my life. And I think that you guys can get to the same point too, but it doesn't happen without incremental progress. So as you make this transition into the carnivore diet, don't get yourself all bent out of shape if you went on a bender and ate some ice cream and had some pizza and stuff, and You thought that was a great way to enjoy yourself or reward yourself. One thing that Mark Sisson shares that I really like a lot, Mark Sisson was the creator of Primal Kitchen. He sold Primal Kitchen to Kraft. Primal Kitchen is a health-based kind of like condiment company, dressings and things like that. So this guy really knows his way around not only the kitchen, but knows his way around nutrition. And, you know, Mark Sisson, when he made this statement, I think he had you know, a lot of us in mind, because he knows kind of the mindset that all of us get. But basically, he wanted you to do exactly what I'm recommending here. He wanted you to get used to these foods. He wanted you to eat a lot of them. You know, if you're going to have olive oil, have at it. If you're going to have butter, have at it. Go for it. You know, have a nice influence of calories, because those calories will actually give you energy and you'll actually feel good. Once you get used to the food, now we can start to think about some sort of reduction in the food, or we can think about a smooth transition into getting rid of some of the fruit, getting rid of some of the vegetables. So now you're smack dab on a rigorous carnivore diet. Hopefully you guys found this to be helpful. In the comments below, let me know what your greatest fear is about trying this carnivore diet, because I know many of you want to do it. You're kind of on the bubble. You're like, I'm not so sure. Join in with us. Maybe give yourself a 2-week grace period to adjust and to be able to get into it with some of those foods that I mentioned. Utilize whole foods. Any meats are fair game. Eggs, fruits, vegetables, some dairy. And that's your list right there. That's your new shopping list. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you all later.
Mikhaila Peterson.
I was pretty desperate. Seems like desperate. If you have the comparison of an autoimmune disorder, then those people seem to have an okay time sticking to it, because it's like they're already suffering so much that you add in a little bit more suffering and it sucks, but just being alive is so shitty that it's like, we'll just wait this out, because if it works, like, that would be a miracle. So how did I stick it out? I don't know. I was just giving it a shot in kind of a scientific way. Like when I cut out most things and went to a really, really low carb diet, I just did it as a science experiment. It was like, okay, realistically, like, these are the foods I can eat. I cannot cheat, or that'll mess up the science experiment. I have to do it for at least a month, because what difference is a week going to make? So I just treated it as an experiment. And when I went to all meat, I thought, I'll do this for 6 weeks. And I won't cheat once, or it'll mess up the experiment. And then I just did it. I don't know if that answers the question at all, but that was my experience.
You know, I know that, first off, giving medical advice is very sketch in general. Like, because I was curious, you know, you mentioned that you got off of OxyContin and you also got off of other medications. And obviously people that hit you up probably have the question of, hey, Mikhaila, how do I do this? Because my doctor doesn't want me to get off these medications, and they probably think this diet's crazy. So how can people navigate those waters when their doctor is telling them, hey, you have to keep taking this, you can't get off, but, you know, they want to, and they want to give it a shot?
So I'm probably less careful than I should be, because I'm so irritated about what I went through. And I got so much, like, when I first went low carb and my symptoms started going away and I stopped taking my medication, I had to lie to my rheumatologist that I was still on my immune suppressants so that he would keep seeing me, because you're allowed to fire the patient if they're not listening to you. But I was like, well, I still need someone to monitor my arthritis. So I've had such terrible experiences with the medical system, not paying attention to the fact that I did a 180 with health. Like, I couldn't even remember questions people asked me or repeat phone numbers back to them. I was so screwed up. So I'm probably less careful than I should be. But if people ask me, like, should I stop taking this medication? I don't answer those questions. Like, what I did was I did stop some of the medications before my symptoms went away. I stopped my immune suppressants so that I could monitor the arthritis properly, to see if I was having flare-ups. But something like the antidepressant that I was on, I didn't think the depression was ever going to leave. I thought it was a genetic problem, because there's some sort of genetic problem, and that I was stuck with it forever. So I didn't actually stop taking that until the depression left. So a lot of the time I say, you know what, try not to be that concerned about it. Get your symptoms under control, and then you can talk to your doctor about getting off your medication. If you don't have symptoms, then there's no reason to be on them. So yeah, I should probably be a bit more careful, but also if you don't talk about it, nobody knows about it. And then everyone just goes on thinking they're doomed with whatever horrible health problem they have forever. That's worse, I would say, than risking telling people what I did.
How long have you suffered from depression? Like when did that manifest into a problem that ended up being crippling or ended up leading you to even go to a doctor?
Symptoms started when I was in grade 1. So I used to come home from school and cry. I didn't cry at school, but I'd come home from school and cry. And then my dad realized that what he was suffering from and his dad was suffering from was depression. When I was in about grade 4 and when I was in grade 5, it started being uncontrollable. I couldn't sleep very well. I was having nightmares, like terrible nightmares. I was starting to get panic attacks. It was nasty. I had these OCD tendencies of reorganizing things in my room until like 4 or 5 a.m. So I wasn't sleeping. And then I started getting into fights with my friends. And I remember getting into this one fight, and I was so angry, and I can remember slamming my door and being like insanely angry and thinking this kind of response doesn't make any sense to the situation that just occurred. And a few years before that, my dad had started taking an SSRI for his depression, and he brought me to a doctor so that's what happened. And then I started taking an SSRI, and the SSRI actually helped a lot. Like, I don't know how I would have survived high school. Ideally, I would have found a diet, but we weren't looking at that at all. So the SSRI honestly probably helped keep me alive through high school, but it's a hell of a lot better not being on them and depressed, half poisoned or whatever.
Were there other techniques that you utilized to manage it, or was it mainly just the medication helped?
No, I just used the medication. I tried exercising. It was so bad that nothing else worked. Exercise made no difference. And I was on sports teams and things. It made no difference. Like the things I generally suggest to people now, I find an infrared sauna can be really helpful. But I was so screwed up that there wasn't anything that would have worked other than diet. Like doing exercise or meditating. Like I used to write. If I got really angry, I used to try and write. But no, no, there wasn't anything else. Thank God for diet.
Where did your depression come from? Any idea, or is it just something that just manifested because you're you?
Because I'm me. Well, like I said, my grandpa and my dad have the same depression. It's a very severe depression, like brain foggy, horrible, tar-like depression. And I assume, I don't know, a lot of people with autoimmune disorders also have mood disorders, and it's probably just general level of inflammation, and some people are more prone to it. But I think it has to do with brain inflammation. And when I got my diet under control and my level of inflammation went down, then that went away. Thank God. Other than that, I have no idea where it came from. Luck. God.
Dr. Anthony Chaffee.
There are some people out there, the microbiome experts, that are really big fans of carnivore diet because you get a lot of very good diversity in your microbiome, and you seem to get the kinds of microbes that are associated with good health in one way or the other. One of the reasons, and I don't know his full arguments for this, but some of the arguments that people make is that your gut biome.
I'll just mention quickly. Joel has kind of pointed out that almost every single person that has been on a carnivore diet has to kind of like walk it back. And he talks about Paul Saladino and something. Joel's not inflammatory. Like he's not, he really wants to get a good message out to people, and he's not trying to like fight people. So he's not like doing dirty shit like that. But in general, that's his main conjecture against a carnivore diet is that he doesn't think it should be done in like perpetuity. Okay. He thinks that plants have like a place in the human diet and a big place.
Well, and that's fine, but I would argue that I've been doing this a lot longer than Paul Saladino has. Dr. Baker's been doing it a lot longer than Paul Saladino has. We've never had any of these problems. That lady, the Inuit lady, she's been doing this for 40 years. She actually got better at taking off the spices. All of her people historically, before, the introduction of Western diets, they ate meat, and then the closer you got to the Arctic Circle, the less plants were available anyway. The original sort of settlers in New England, I remember reading an account when I think I was in high school. The more southern people in sort of southern Canada, northern America, northeast America, they were like, look, these guys are living up basically in the snow all the time. I get it that they eat meat during that time, but for 3 months out of the year when things thaw, surely they could live off the land. But they don't. They just eat meat. So I think you can, obviously. And our ancestors during the ice ages were, right? There aren't many plants and fruit growing during ice ages, right? And so I think that, so I think that is definitely the case. You can absolutely subsist solely on meat in perpetuity. There are entire civilizations that have been doing that generationally. And you can't do that generation after generation after generation in good health unless you have everything you need. And you're not going to survive in the Arctic North or during an ice age unless you're in very good health. You either thrive or die in those conditions. And then another argument that people make with fiber is that sometimes that will get broken down slightly into, like butyrate, butyric acid, and that feeds your enterocytes, and that's good for your gut lining. But that's actually one of the major ketone bodies that you make when you're in ketosis. So you're going to have a lot of that available to you. You don't need to get it from your gut. You get it through your bloodstream as well. Butter gets its name from its high butyric acid content. That's how it gets its name. So there's plenty of that around. And so, yes, you can get that from having some fiber, but there's plenty of other sources as well. As far as hormesis is concerned, it's possible. But what is the hormetic effect? I mean, alcohol gives us a hormetic effect in the sense that we build up a tolerance to alcohol, but does that provide a benefit anywhere else? But that is a hormetic effect where we're building up a tolerance and to
I would say probably, because is alcohol all negative?
I don't know. I think a lot of it is, but
some of it's probably positive.
And at very low doses, it probably could be. I mean, at very, very low doses, arsenic has actually been shown to be beneficial. So I definitely agree with the idea of hormesis to an extent. I don't think that necessarily every harmful chemical is hormetic. I don't know why it would be. I mean, there's just millions of these things out there. But maybe. But what are the doses? I mean, that's one thing that, when you talk to people that are plant-based, they say, oh, well, yes, there are these plant toxins, but there's this hormetic effect. Okay, I haven't actually seen anyone study that. I've actually seen say, hey, in spinach, these things cause harm, but in this dose, if you have 3 leaves under these conditions, you get this hormetic effect. So what doses, which chemicals are hormetic? At what level are they hormetic? Are they providing an actual overall benefit, or is it just you're getting a tolerance to these toxins just like alcohol, and that's the only thing you're getting? There's more than one toxin in these plants. There can be hundreds, if not thousands, in some of these things. And so you somehow got it right that the amount of salad you're eating gives you an exact dose of hormetic effect from this one chemical in spinach and all the other things you're eating. But what about the other chemicals in there? Are they all hormetic? Are they all hormetic at that exact same dose? Do you even know what the dose is? These plants are not making these chemicals to benefit us. They are not making these chemicals to be hormetic. We are not in the Garden of Eden. So they are doing this to deter us, to poison us, because they don't want to be eaten. You can make an argument for fruit because the plant wants that seed moved. But it doesn't necessarily, so it wants something to eat it to move that seed, but it doesn't necessarily want us to eat it. A lot of these fruits and berries actually co-evolved with birds. So the birds would eat them and they'd pass these seeds around. In fact, there are a number of examples where those seeds will only germinate in the gut of certain birds. So like a cassowary bird, they just eat fruit. It's about 150 different fruits that they eat in the tropics. Mm-hmm. Every single one will kill you dead because the plant wants the cassowary bird to eat the fruit, not anything else, because those seeds will only germinate in the gut of a cassowary bird. So if the cassowary bird leaves an area, those plants die out, right? And so, or if you eat that fruit, that seed is not going to turn into a plant. So it needs to protect its baby, right? And so a lot of berries, a lot of fruit are actually still quite toxic. Even citrus, they have something called furanocoumarins, which are toxic. And this is why, you don't take grapefruit with certain medications, because there are these furanocoumarins, which our liver has to detox. And some of the liver enzymes that detoxify the furanocoumarins are what metabolize certain medications like statins and other heart drugs. And so there are certain medications that say don't eat grapefruit or drink grapefruit juice if you take this medication. And that's why. All citrus have furanocoumarins. Some of the furanocoumarins will be light sensitive, so they will irreversibly bind to protein and DNA and cause permanent damage. And so people have actually gotten, it makes them very light sensitive, right? So
on that same topic, do you think that some of these things might be less, it might have less of a negative impact on us if it's in accordance to light, cold, heat, seasonal, because we shouldn't really necessarily, I guess shouldn't is a weird word, but we didn't used to have access to all these carbohydrate, to all this fruit, to all this stuff, thousands of years ago, 365, but there was times a year where we walked by a bush and it would have fucking berries on it and be like, oh, that looks delicious. And we'd taste it and probably tasted amazing to find stuff like that.
Well, and there are examples of that, like the Plains Indians who just ate buffalo, right? They'd chase a group of buffalo over a cliff, like when the season, where they come through seasonally, and they die, they'd preserve them, dry them, make pemmican, and that's what they eat throughout the year. And that's predominantly what they ate. They were high-fat carnivores, and they were thriving. They were very, very healthy, and a lot of them were actually quite tall. Like there was a meeting between Jefferson, then President Jefferson, and one of some of these Plains Indians, or maybe they were up by Minnesota. Anyway, so they came over, and so Jefferson was like 6'2", 6'3". And he describes these guys as giants. He said these people were giants. They described them as probably pushing 7 feet tall. They were just absolute monsters. So these were big, strong people, predominantly just ate meat, but they sometimes incorporated berries. And sometimes they would, for like ceremonies, like a wedding or some like special occasion, they would make pemmican with some berries mixed in. So that did happen. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I just point out that just because it's a fruit doesn't mean it's good for you, and because there are a lot of fruits that will just kill you. There's a lot of berries that are very toxic. That's a sort of a traditional tribal thing. It's like don't eat the red berries, and that's why. So some of these things can be toxic. Also, I think that just the sugar content is harmful. When you're like you're saying seasonally, this only comes around every now and then.
Yeah, like right now in this area, strawberries aren't in season, but if you were to get a strawberry, it's like this big. It's like the size of this water bottle. And you're like, how did they make this thing? And like half the thing is like white, and then the rest of it's like bright red. Yeah,
so these things are like bioengineered. When the Plains Indians were eating this stuff, and our ancestors elsewhere were eating
a little tiny berry, get like a little sweetness on your teeth, and you'd probably be like, wow, that's amazing.
And the Inuit people say, oh, well, they had berries and things like that. Well, first of all, they're seasonal. Second of all, they're like these little lingonberries. They're like just sour as hell. Like it's not exactly sweet. And so a lot of these things they've been cultivated to be much, much more sweet. Like if you look at the historical ancestor of a banana, it's a very different plant, big old seeds, and mangoes as well. Those are just very tough, very fibrous, massive seed, and not much sugar there. But we've cultivated these things to be much, much more sweet. And so that's not, if we're talking strictly natural, what we were eating when we evolved, or humans, Homo sapiens, have been very, very genetically conserved for about the last 300,000 years. Obviously, there's some, differences. People with have access or had exposure to agriculture, from the agricultural revolution around 8,000-10,000 years ago, have made some adaptations to that sort of those toxins. I think we have built up a bit of an immunity to that. And then you have, say, like the Native Americans or even Native Australians, where I'm living now, are much more sensitive to these things. So that lady who was Native American, she couldn't even deal with spices, right? That's how sensitive she is, because her people have only been exposed to this stuff in the last few hundred years, whereas like our ancestors would have been 10,000 years, so there's a difference there. Native Australians, Aboriginals, again, only the last few hundred years that they've been exposed to a Western diet. And this is actually what it used to be called. They used to call just the normal, like now we call them chronic diseases, chronic illnesses. They used to call them the diseases of the West, right? Because only these Western cultures would get these things. They go to Australia, they go to Native America, or go to North America, South America. They find these people just weren't getting these diseases. So they called them the diseases of the West. I remember hearing when I was a kid, just on like a news program, that when eating a Western diet, Native Americans were 4 times as likely to get obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and all the rest.
Do you know what your testosterone levels are at? How about your estrogen? How about your prolactin? How about your cholesterol? If the answer is, I don't know what they're at, well, we've been talking about blood work for a long time now. That's why we partnered with Merrick Health, a company owned by Derek for More Plates, More Dates. Now, with Merrick, you can get yourself something called the Power Project Panel, which will give you 26 different labs that will help you understand what's going on underneath the hood. After that, you'll be able to be partnered with one of their patient care coordinators, which will give you interventions that range from lifestyle, supplements, to potential hormonal health treatments that can help move you in the right direction. But it all starts with knowing on what's going on down here. So get your blood work done. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, we have 2 options for you guys. Head over to merrickhealth.com/powerproject. That's MAREK health.com/powerproject. There you guys will see the Power Project panel that Nsima was just talking about. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save $101 off of that panel. Now, if you want to custom select your own panel, you guys can use promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off all labs. Again, that's at merrickhealth.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, doesn't that mean the food is causing the disease? Because if they don't eat the food, they don't get the disease. And we eat the food and we get the disease, we just get it at a lower rate. And I was like, okay, and what's a Western diet as compared to what they're eating? What's a non-Western diet? And, I didn't know it at the time, but, they were just eating meat, predominantly meat. Obviously, they could have some other things, but that's what they were eating. So I think that that's indicative of those plant toxins causing this toxicity, this exposure relationship. They're exposed to a toxin, their body's not able to deal with it, and they get these manifestations of ill health. The natural state of humanity is healthy, but right now no one is healthy. I think something like 88% of Americans have at least one metabolic illness. 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. That is not the natural state. So something is happening in our environment, something is happening to us. That is not our genetic heritage. Our genetic heritage is to thrive and be healthy.
I have done probably a lot more than just 80 days of the carnivore diet when you consider that I've been meat-based for a really long time. As soon as I found out about protein when I was about 13 years old, I started eating more of it. I started eating more chicken and started eating more ground beef and things like that. And later on, as I wanted to get in better shape and be less fat, because at a young age, at the age of 16, I was around the same weight I am right now, around 240 pounds. I wanted to lose weight, and I found out about a ketogenic diet. Anyway, more recently, what I found in kind of rebooting and restarting, mainly being carnivore, mainly being meat-based, Dr. Sean Baker started World Carnivore Month in January 2017. And I've been doing it every year. It gets me fired up, gets me excited, and then I go all in on it. As you guys saw, Joe Rogan and my brother and some other people going all in on it. I was able to lose weight. I was able to get lean, especially like those first 20 days. I just really took off a bunch of fat. But in adding other things back in, adding in some milk, adding in some heavy cream, eating cheese, and ditching some fasting for a while, because I don't think it's great to fast all the time year round. So I was utilizing some intermittent fasting, and I've gotten rid of that. The main thing is that it keeps me within striking distance of getting as lean as I'd like at any time. So if I felt like just getting really lean, I could do so within the next 3 or 4 weeks. If I want to pivot and I want to get really strong, you guys actually saw this happen. First 20 days, I started flexing on you a little bit, and you guys were like, holy shit, like he's leaning out really good. And I was even considering, hey, maybe I'll do another bodybuilding show. As I was going through that process and as I was lifting, I started to notice, oh wow, like, okay, my squat is coming back a little bit. That's feeling pretty good. I started squatting 5 plates. I started moving some weights around. All my other training I had, except for a little tiny minor bit of pain in the elbow right here on this guy, I had no pain anywhere. So I was like, all right, let me push the weights around. Started pushing the weights around, and that started to feel really good. And then from there, I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can gain weight on this diet. Because I was doing a lot of fasting. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm doing 18 and 20-hour fast every day. And I got some information from my buddy Joel Green and a couple other people. When I get information from people, I really like to test it out. I like to try it. So Joel said, hey, you know what? You need to be a little careful with how much fasting you're actually doing, because it can have a really big kind of rebound effect, and maybe you should try something different for a while. So I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So I ditched the fasting, and I would just eat when I was hungry. I would still utilize some intermittent fasting, but I would eat when I was hungry. I would eat until I was full. Anytime I had a craving for anything, I'd make sure I eat, but I would stay on the diet. I would stay within the confines of the diet, which is basically any type of meat that you can think of, butter, cheese, bone broth, and then I added in milk and heavy cream. And you saw me kind of pivot from getting leaned out really good within 25-30 days of January, and then boom, I exploded and started to gain some weight because I started to eat more. I started to eat a lot more eggs. Eggs are high in cholesterol, and eggs can help build up some testosterone in your body. And so I added in some eggs, I added in milk, I added in heavy cream, and I put on like 20 pounds in a really short period of time. That shocked the hell out of me. And as I was lifting, as I was squatting, the 5 plates turned into 6 plates pretty quickly as well. And that started to fly, and that started to feel really good. And so even, through this 80 days, you guys have seen me all over the place. I've been in Columbus, Ohio. I've been in Los Angeles. I have been at a 49ers playoff game. You guys have seen me, birthdays and parties that we've had. I've just been living my life just as you guys do with your children and with your family. The diet hasn't felt hard at all. It's felt very simple. It's felt very easy. The diet is so simple. Like, hey man, how do I lose fat? Just eat meat and exercise. And you will most likely lose body fat, especially if you have a lot of it to lose. Things can get trickier if you're already lean. Then we might have to implement some different tricks. But for the most part, that's a real simple thing to do. Oh, wait a second. Only eat meat? What does that mean? What else can I eat? Not a whole lot. It's pretty much just meat, eggs, bone broth, butter, as I mentioned. And then if you want to gain weight, you can throw in milk and heavy cream, because those things will help you gain some weight. But what I love about it the most is just that the diet has been super simple. As I mentioned, it hasn't been hard. I always have food prepared because I use a crock pot, which is just a slow cooker. And people ask for my recipes for the crock pot all the time. Well, here's the recipe. I take a steak, I throw it in the crock pot, I dump some Epic, it's called Epic bone broth. I throw Epic bone broth on top of it. It's beef jalapeno, and then I throw some salt in there, and it's good to go. The thing sits there for maybe like a day or two. Sits there for 24 hours or so, and then the steak is just absolutely perfect. It's all like falling apart and everything. You can cook any type of meat in a slow cooker. It could be chicken, it could be pork, it could be literally anything. More often than not, I try to use a chuck roast in the crock pot, and that seems to work really well. But don't take anybody else's advice for it. Throw whatever the hell steaks that you want in there. Because they'll all come out pretty good. The only problem is they always taste like crock pot meat. It has a certain specific flavor to it, and it never really changes. Not much you can do about that. But you could spice it up if you wanted. You could throw some garlic in there, some onions, some different things, so it has a little bit different flavor to it. But that's my go-to. That's there all the time. I had some this morning, and I cooked up some eggs with it just to try to give it a little bit different flavor. And I mixed the eggs in with it. But I have that almost every single morning. Usually later on in the day, I'll have a hamburger, and then the last thing I'll eat is steak. So every day I get to experience kind of some different steaks and some different. I'll buy some burgers, and I'll use Piedmontese burgers, and I will just throw different types of cheese on top of it. Sometimes I'll buy fancy, nice cheese. Sometimes I'll buy grass-fed cheese. Sometimes I'll just buy straight up American cheese. It just depends on what I want for the day. But that massively changes the food. That massively changes how it tastes. that massively changes exactly what it is. I've made meatballs. I've done all kinds of stuff. Meatballs are super simple. Get turkey, kind of a fattier turkey, not super lean turkey, and get some pork. You know, roll those things up in little meatballs, throw some Italian seasoning on there, throw it in the oven. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of marinara sauce. I mean, you can't have meatballs without marinara sauce. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't care what diet you're on. I'm Italian over here. You know, you got to sometimes, and that's the other thing. Don't worry about what people have to say about your version of the carnivore diet. If you're able to make progress on it, and if you want to lose weight, and you are progressing towards dropping weight, you are progressing this way towards losing some weight, and your goal is over here, and you're heading in that direction, no one can tell you anything about what you're doing. No one can ever say what you're doing is wrong or it's not the right way to do it, because you have a particular goal, you're heading there, and don't let anybody else stop you or slow you down with their nonsense, because you're going to get a lot of different people saying, that's not carnivore, that's not carnivore. Stay on the diet the best that you can, and realize that if you have a cup of coffee, that you're not thrown off the team or anything like that. Coffee is a plant, okay? If you have kratom, you're not off the team. If you have any sort of plants, or you use chewing tobacco, or you smoke a cigarette, or even if you have a beer, you're not thrown off the team. You just want to try to be as consistent with it as you possibly can. And for myself, over the course of the 80 days, it's not like I've been super crazy precise with it. I've had a Quest cookie, I've had a Quest bar, I've had a Perfect Keto bar. I've utilized products from Perfect Keto, such as like the MCT oil powder. I have whey protein shakes, Slingshot protein. I have Keto Pro. I have some of these different things to keep me consistent with the diet, to keep me on the actual plan for a longer period of time. If I didn't have that stuff, I might go haywire and I might end up eating like a brownie or something like that, or ice cream. And then in that case, I would be kicked off the team, right? So make it make sense for you. This has been my experience through the 80 days. I've been feeling great with it. I'm about to hit up a workout right now. Energy has been really good. My energy hasn't changed really, because my energy, I always feel fairly energetic. I'm fired up and excited about every single day. So that hasn't really changed. But for some of you that may be flat here and there, this might be the perfect diet for you, to help get you fired up and to help get you excited. And I know that it will help pull body fat off of you if you've had a hard time with losing body fat. And again, what I've found for a lot of lifters, a lot of bigger guys, and a lot of just people that kind of enjoy eating, period, they like some of these savory foods. They like some of these fattier foods. So eggs and bacon and butter and steak and hamburger and cheeseburger and going to In-N-Out Burger here and there. All of it sounds like an amazing opportunity rather than being on a diet. So if you're that kind of person, please join me. Please join the fun. Please, in the comments below, I really want to know how long you've been doing the diet for. I want to know how it's impacting you. And I want to know if you were able to pass it on to anybody else. Were you able to say, hey, Tag, you're it. Try that with somebody in your family. Say, hey, you're it. And they'll say, what? Say, yeah, you're on the carnivore diet, bitch. Strength is...
Bart Kay.
Have you been able to find the optimal human diet, and is it a carnivorous style diet?
I believe it is a carnivorous diet, as close to 100% as the person concerned can possibly muster and maintain in their lifestyle, given that human beings are just that. They're human beings and there are stresses on them, and humans do live in an environment that's not the natural environment that they lived in as we evolved. Sure, all understood. The difficulty with this is you can't go to this body of evidence called nutrition science, human nutrition science. And the reason you can't go to that body of evidence is because it does not exist. There are mechanistic speculation studies of a short-term under poor control. There are no long-term hard health outcome experimental intervention studies in human beings over multiple decades, kept under lock and key under proper observation in a laboratory setting to determine cause and effect. As such, we have an ideology, which is a prevalent ideology around human nutrition, and that prevalent ideology is based on consensus and not science, and it is bought and paid for. That's where the problem is. So to find what is actually likely, according to actual hard science, to be ideal for humans, health span-wise, lifespan wise, all that kind of stuff, you actually have to go to a number of areas of science outside the so-called nutrition science fraternity. You need to go to comparative anatomy and physiology of human organ systems. You need to go to studies of the metabolic pathways. You need to go to anthropological evidence of such as stable isotope testing from the collagen of long bones of skeletal remains of humans. When you do that and you look through all of that material, the result is pretty unequivocal. Also, you need to apply the lens of Darwinian evolution as a fact, an absolute irrefutable fact. Now, that does not preclude an original creation by some higher power or being or God, if you want to believe in that. I'm not saying that's wrong, but since that time, which is clearly a lot longer ago than what, for example, the Bible will tell us, there are processes going on in the human body, in the human genome. We are subject to natural selection pressures in the same way any other animal is, or any other bacteria even, or virus or anything. Not that a virus is a living thing, but that's for another day. So those are the things you look at, and all of those things point in the same direction. All of those things tell us that human beings are absolutely obligate hyper-carnivores.
I kind of agree in some sense that I'm not a huge fan of trying to science the human body as it relates to really anything. I don't like it in lifting. I don't like it in nutrition necessarily, although it does seem to have some utility. And from an observational standpoint, it seems like we can get closer to the truth sometimes on some stuff. Like, for example, people that are able to reach old age and be still have good vitality are usually smaller people. They usually don't have a lot of body weight on them. Like, we can kind of observe that.
But I'm doing well then. I'm good then.
There's not a lot of people that are 95 years old that are probably carrying around an extra 60 pounds of body weight. Sure. and things like that. So, but those people, they're not necessarily using a carnivorous diet. So, like, I guess as long as you don't overeat, as long as you don't overconsume energy for like really long periods of time, it seems like you maybe get a pass to live a long and pretty good life.
Yes. Yeah. I think there is a value in not, for example, carrying extra body mass, not being, for want of a better term, overly adipose, overly fat or obese. Okay. All of those things will definitely lead you to a higher likelihood of an earlier death. I don't think anyone remotely sensible would question that. I think we would all accept that as being a pretty fair statement of fact. If you're over fat, then your likelihood of death for multiple different reasons per year of follow-up is going to be higher. Yes. So you can eat a reasonable diet in terms of the volume of effective actual energy that you're consuming such that you are weight stable, and you might live 90, 100 years. Absolutely. When you talk to experts in comparative genetics and comparative anatomy and comparative physiology, and you say to those people, take modern lifestyles out of it, take all of this out of it, just looking at the human system as we can understand it, at the molecular level and at the genetic level, if we just got out of our own stupid way, how long should a given living human being live? What is the lifespan of a human as determined by those things? Generally, the answer that comes back is around about 150, actually, for an average human life. That's what it should be if we would just get out of our own way. The only way really to do that is to eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet predictably. Sure, there'll be outliers. There'll be people that will last 150 years drinking an 8-ounce bottle of scotch and smoking 2 packs a day. Absolutely. There'll be someone just to prove that wrong that does that. But we're talking about on average here. On average, the only way to achieve this is to eat the way you are designed to eat as a human being and to exercise appropriately, which means appropriate volume, appropriate intensity, appropriate rest days in between. which is another thing that many lifters get badly wrong. But again, that's also for another day. So I think what you're saying is true. Yes, absolutely. It's better not to be fat. But that doesn't mean that not being fat is optimal. Optimal is following your genetic gift, your evolutionary gift, following the way you are designed as a human being to interact with the world in which you live, as closely as possible in modern societies. Because let's face it, we cannot avoid the toxins that we've pumped into our environment entirely.
What you got over there, Andrew?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to remind people watching, if they really, really dislike what Bart's saying, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button. Get some more of that.
do that.
Get some of that negative. It works out. All publicity is good publicity. But
That's right.
I did want to go back to some of the like tracking and the calories in, calories out thing. And I'm sure you've gotten this many times before, but I'm just curious to hear it, especially for our audience. But the example you gave about the person that is going to undertake this style of diet and they vastly undereat, and next thing you know, they feel like crap, their energy is probably going to be super low, and then they either yo-yo diet or they completely get off the diet and they say, it obviously didn't work for me.
Yeah.
In my opinion, when I see or when I hear about this example, I would see it more as user error, not the fact that like calories in, calories out doesn't work. So again, I'm sure you've heard this many times, but I'm curious to hear.
It's about nuance, Andrew, isn't it? It's about the nuance. It's about saying to someone, here is all the information you need. Okay. So just getting up and saying calories in, calories out is brilliant and will work. And that's what you should do. We're done here. Thanks very much. Join me next week when we'll talk about something else. That is irresponsible. That is not the information that person needs to responsibly manage their body composition. That is partial information, that is incompetent, that is irresponsible, and that should stop.
Okay.
I've never said anything different from that.
Yeah.
And so, okay, then I just want to go back. So just real quickly, or I guess maybe it can't be that quick. Were you tracking prior to the 6,000 calories a day for 2 weeks? The reason why I ask is because to the best of your knowledge, and I have an idea how you were able to understand, but how do you know that you were in fact in a calorie surplus when you took away a lot of the, like, you said the pizza, and then I think you said the pints of beer.
So number one, the volume of both food and alcohol put together that I was consuming, if you use 7 kcals per gram of alcohol, and if you use 4 kcals of energy for carbohydrates, which is not particularly accurate, and if you use 4 kcals of energy per gram of protein, which is vastly, hugely, totally inaccurate, then on a back of an envelope calculation, my caloric intake typically, fairly stably for the 6-12 months or so prior to that 2 weeks, was, without actually tracking it, so this is back of an envelope, this is what I'm eating, and I'm being honest with myself, 2,100 to 2,350, give or take, per day total. The actual calorie intake during the 2 weeks was tracked according to the labels, the chit that the steaks come in, and there's a plastic over that and there's a label on it that says this is what's in it. I was using those figures and cross-checking a bit with weighing it because I know about the 20% error. And the range was 6,000 to 6,500 for that 14, 15 days. I can't remember whether it was 14 or 15 days. That's why I keep saying 14 or 15. Doesn't matter. That's not really the point. So yes, it was a pretty accurate guesstimate of what was really genuinely going on. So yes, I did increase my effective so-called caloric intake by 3.5 times over.
How did you personally find the carnivore diet?
I really enjoy it. It's something that I would adhere to the 95% adherence level pretty much all the time, and I have done now for about 7 years. The only things that typically remain in my diet now that are not carnivorous is I drink coffee, and I like to have a kind of tzatziki style thing with my meat, which is really just unsweetened Greek style yogurt, which is fine and is carnivorous, but there's a very small amount of very finely chopped garlic in it. So I know I have to hand in my carnivore card and report for public naming and shaming. I never really was a carnivore and I did it wrong anyway. If you like, fine. And then there's the occasional splurge on some corn chips or potato chips. And I might occasionally have maybe 5 or 6 units of alcohol after a game of sport on a Saturday.
How did you come across this?
The carnivore diet was a natural progression from my sort of 27-year history or so now of ketogenic lifestyle. The first time I heard about it was when I saw the classic Jordan Peterson podcast with Joe Rogan. And I went, yeah, that makes sense. I'll check into it because I'm a scientist and I want to make sure that, this is not going to lead me to huge nutrient deficiency. I'm not going to die of scurvy or get bum cancer or something like that. And so I checked into it a little bit and went, yeah, this is fine. I'm going to do that. And I've never looked back. It's made a huge, incredible difference to many aspects of my health without any question. And I find it's something that's easy to adhere to a relatively high percentage level. It's not problematic. It's not a distress or a chore. It's really, it's just a perfectly normal part of my life now. It's not even a diet. It's a lifestyle. It's how I do nutrition, by eating meat. And when I say meat, I mean muscle meat. I don't eat organs at all. So it's muscle meat, associated fat, and selected dairy products basically is the basis.
So for yourself, why is it that fruits and vegetables are out of the picture? And why would you suggest that people also get it out of the picture?
Right. Okay. So there are 2 or 3 reasons, really. The first reason is fiber, dietary fiber, which is absolutely, apparently, contraindicated in the human diet. It is not helpful. It does not improve bowel function. There is only one even remotely pseudo-clinical study on this topic available, and it unequivocally clearly says the more fiber, the more gut dysfunction. Over a relatively short period, sure, but the result is so striking, so clear that it's very difficult to ignore it entirely. I personally, 7 years or so with basically, to all intents and purposes, no fiber in my diet at all. So clearly I haven't been to the bathroom for 7 years. Mm-hmm. No. Once a day, every day, like clockwork, no stress, no strain, not even cut into stanzas. It's like the machine at McDonald's that does the ice cream. We're out of here, done, no problem. Perfect function.
Yeah.
Vastly better than it's been for my entire life because I've had every digestive disorder you could possibly imagine at some point, all miraculously evaporated when I removed all the fiber from my diet. The next person maybe doesn't react to fiber as strongly as I do, but make no mistake, they will react to some level, and it will be a detractor on their health span, probably on their lifespan. It will be one of those things that determines that person does not make it to 150. One of many things, probably. So get it gone. You don't need it. It's not required. There is nothing in fiber that you can't live perfectly well and healthily without. It doesn't impact your bowel function negatively. That's fine. The second reason to avoid fruits is they contain a lot of carbohydrates, which are absolutely contraindicated in the diet. Exogenous carbohydrates above the individual tolerance level. The individual tolerance to carbohydrate is just that. It's a little bit individual. It depends on your age, your stage, your body size, your fitness level, your training status, the time of year. All of those things play into it, absolutely, and a bunch of other things as well. But make no mistake, you cross your tolerance level to carbohydrates and there will be a problem with your health in some way. It will probably present itself as weight gain, fat gain, I should say. Let's call a spade, fat gain. inflammatory increase, electrolyte disturbance, palpitations, muscle cramps, attention deficit problems, sleeping problems, those kinds of things. All the things that Paul Saladino suffered, basically.
Did you have more? I don't want to cut
Yeah, there's
you
one
off.
other.
Okay.
Many fruits contain seeds, which are perfectly safe if they pass through your alimentary tract unbroken. But if you chew those seeds up, or those seeds are broken down and to any degree in your gut, those seeds will release toxins, vastly problematic toxins. So they're the three reasons why fruit is not required. And as a corollary, whatever the word is, to that, there are people that will say, oh, yes, but vitamin C, though. Well, it turns out that if you're not consuming a bunch of carbohydrates, then your requirement for vitamin C is near zero.
This is Mark Smelly Bell, and I am your ultimate carnivore resource. So please subscribe to this channel and let me know how the carnivore diet is going for you. Let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about carnivore variation. I don't think you guys understand how much variation that we have when it comes to the carnivore diet. I think you're just thinking meat. And whenever we say meat, you're just thinking steak. And for some reason, whenever we say steak, you're just thinking about a cow. But you can have elk, you can have bison, you could eat fish, you could have salmon, you could have whitefish, you could have scallops, you could have shrimp, you could have clams and mussels, and there's just so many different varieties of food that you can have. One of my favorite things to eat on a carnivore diet, I love eating bacon, I love eating sausage. I personally love breakfast sausage a lot. When it comes to sausage, there's tons of variety of sausage even. There's like Italian sausage, there's spicy sausages, there's just, the variations go on and on. And then in terms of like burgers, you can have a bison burger, you can have a regular kind of hamburger that you make at home, or you can roll through In-N-Out Burger and get what's called a Flying Dutchman. Do you guys know about the Flying Dutchman? You can get a mustard fried Flying Dutchman, and that is pretty damn amazing. It's just meat and cheese and mustard, or you can just get the Flying Dutchman by itself, which is just meat and cheese. You can also go to McDonald's or Burger King or any of these places. Now most of them have a kiosk and you just order the burger by itself. Any restaurant that you like that has burgers, you know, you can probably get like a bacon cheeseburger from some of these spots. Let's not forget about how good an omelet is. Have any of you ever tried to make an egg yolk omelet? They're unbelievable. Now you're gonna say, Smelly, tell me the recipe and show me how to cook it. Look guys, I don't wanna have to hold your hand for everything. I will show you when I got some time to shoot some stuff for Smelly's Kitchen, but it's easy. It's an egg yolk omelet. It's what it sounds like. Add a couple extra egg yolks, get rid of a couple whites, and you're gonna notice the difference with an egg yolk omelet. It is so damn good. So try, I don't know, make like a 6 or 8 egg omelet. Take out 2 or 3 of the whites, ditch them, ditch those bad boys. Really, you know, stir that thing up a bunch, throw it in a pan, and you have yourself an egg yolk omelet. Throw some cheese on it, throw some ham on it. Let's not forget about ham. Ham, turkey. You ever have boar's head, Black Forest ham? You ever fry that up in a pan before? Black Forest ham that you could easily put on like a sandwich or something like that. Fry that up with your omelet in the morning with some, I like American cheese. Do that with some American cheese. You'll be shocked at how damn good that is. Speaking of cheese, how many different types of cheeses are there? For some of you that are really trying to commit to losing weight, you might not be able to eat that much cheese. But for some of the rest of you, you might be able to enjoy a lot of cheese and still lose weight. How many varieties of cheese are there? There's feta cheese, there's goat cheese, there's blue cheese, there's, I mean, the list goes on and on. There's you know, cheddar cheese, there's raw cheese. Cheese is absolutely amazing, very savory, very flavorful. And so those are things that you might want to try. You guys ever try a chaffle before? A chaffle is absolutely amazing. All it is cheese and egg scrambled up and then thrown into a waffle maker. I'll be making those later tonight. I'll record some of that for Smelly's Kitchen so you guys can see how that's made. But I mean, you know those commercials, those Geico's commercials, so easy a caveman can do it? A lot of this stuff is so easy that a caveman can do it. When it comes to steak, like learn how to cook. because part of the main thing of this diet, the carnivore challenge that we're running through the whole month of January, that was started by our boy, Dr. Sean Baker. We always have to give him praise and give him props for starting this in the first place and getting people to come together to get healthier, to lose weight, and to get in better shape. And there's no question that this diet is healthy, because remember, most Americans, I think it's around 60% or more, are obese at this point. Many are going to have diabetes, and many more will have Alzheimer's and dementia because they have diabetes. So when we can lose weight and we can fight against insulin resistance, this style of diet, a ketogenic style diet, or a low carb style diet, or a no carb style diet, or a meat-based diet like this, is going to help fight against those things, and it's going to help us to get headed in the right direction. You got high blood pressure, you got high sugar in your body, this is going to be a diet that you're going to want to give a shot, you're going to want to try. And I'm not just speaking out my ass, I'm not just saying this randomly. There's many people that have told me, that have come on my podcast and said, hey, look, I've got myself rid of a lot of medications that I used to take. I was able to get my dad off of some medication years ago by having him do a low carb diet. I was able to help my mother-in-law last year. You saw some of the results that she had. She did fantastic on a carnivore diet. And then plus the millions upon millions upon millions of people that are tuning into this channel, that are checking these things out, that are giving us feedback every single day, telling us about the weight loss and the dramatic changes that they've had. But look, there is a lot of variety on this diet. For me, I still have whey protein shakes. I don't really give a rat's ass about somebody having these strict protocols about, oh, you can only eat this and you can only eat that. Look, whey protein comes from an animal, right? I'm trying to eat things that are animal-based. I'm trying to eat things that are going to promote me heading in the right direction. I would love for you to do the same thing. If that means that you have a serving of vegetables every day, I don't think that's a crime. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because all we're trying to do is be better than we were yesterday. That's it. And we're in this for the long haul. We're in this for the long game. So we're not just trying to commit to this really, really hard diet that we don't really want to do for a month. We're trying to commit to this so that we can turn this into a lifestyle at some point, so that way we can come back and push that reset button on our metabolism anytime we want, and we can utilize the carnivore diet as a strategy, just the same way that we might utilize a ketogenic style diet, just the same way we might use the vertical diet, just the same way we might use intermittent fasting intermittently throughout the year, right? Why not utilize all these things? There's a lot of great principles when it comes to nutrition. What about taking a diet break, and what about implementing, if it fits your macros, for a while, and allowing yourself to eat some Pop-Tarts and eat some candy maybe during your training sessions, and do some things that are a little different, that are a little bit fun, that maybe you don't normally experience? You think that you can still improve, in the course of a year, given that scenario? I know that you can, because I do that myself. I change my diet up all the time. That's a big part of Operation Get Less Fatterist, is to have a lot of variety with our diet. We want to have variety with this diet the best that we can, even though we're limited to mainly only eating animal products, mainly only eating meat. For those of you that like liver, and for those of you that like organ meat, you might want to try to mix that in as well, because it's going to add a burst of vitamins and minerals to your plan that otherwise you might not be getting. For those of you that aren't doing that, for those of you not interested in that, you can supplement that. But for myself personally, I don't even bother to supplement it. I haven't found a need to really worry about it, and so I kind of keep trucking along. The diet feels simple. It feels easy to me. I'll give you an example of something that I cooked up last night. So I ended up having a steak, and my dad ended up bringing over a salad that had steak in it. So I had steak and a steak salad. And so yes, I did eat some greens. And then my double dinner, as I like to call it, because I eat twice at night very often. I'll eat at like 3, and then I eat again at like 5 or 6. And I had Piedmontese hot dogs all chopped up with some raw cheddar cheese on there. It was so good. I sat down and watched the show Succession. That's on, I think, Netflix or whatever. So I sat down and watched that for a little bit, watched 2 shows in a row. I was smashing on those hot dogs. So be creative with it, man. Think about some different things that you can make. Let's not forget about cured meats as well. A charcuterie board, right? You can have, pepperoni, you can have salami, you can have prosciutto, you can have all these different things There's a lot of great options when it comes to the carnivore diet. I just sometimes think that we're not thinking about it. Those of you that are hunters know what I'm talking about because you've been eating a lot of these different types of meat for a really long time. Eating duck and elk and bison and venison and whatever else you can get your hands on. Enjoy the variation that you have on the carnivore diet. In the comments below, let me know some like sleeper foods that you're sneaking in here and there that are still part of this. Let's not forget that we also have the option of eating some Jell-O. Yeah, gelatin, right? So I eat that almost every night with some heavy whipping cream on top of it. If I feel like going back and eating 2 or 3 or 4 more, I'll eat 4 or 5 or 6 of them because they're only 10 calories a pop. And so if I ate 5 or 6 of them, it's only 50 or 60 calories. Comments below, let me know what you're doing to get yourself through each and every day on this carnivore diet. Remember, I'm Mark Smelly Bell, and I am your ultimate carnivore resource. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you tell other people to subscribe. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you all later.
If you enjoyed this episode, which I know you did because you got this far, then click this one right here because you'll enjoy this one just as much. And if you're choosing to still listen to me currently as I'm telling you to go over here and watch this video, well, hey, that just means you like the sound of my voice. And well, I'll just keep seducing you right here. Hello.